Well, Tim, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm really appreciate you having me on.
I am really looking forward to hearing your story. There are a lot of people who, wanted to get sober for a long time. And I understand that that's part of your story, that you wanted to get sober for a long
Hello,
time. And now you've been
friends.
able
Thank
to
you for
maintain
downloading
a
the podcast. My
healthy
name is Arlena,
sobriety,
and
which
I'll be your
congratulations, that's
host. In
amazing.
case we
Thank
haven't
you.
met yet, I'm a
And so
certified
I'd love to
recovery
hear
coach and
I'm
hypnotist.
really looking forward to
I am
hearing your
obsessed with
experience
all
about
things
what it was
recovery,
like for you
including
to struggle
neuroscience,
for the length of
reprogramming, the
time that you
subconscious
did.
mind,
And I
law
was
of
going to ask
attraction,
you
and
some
all
things
forms of
around,
personal growth
what was
and
helpful to
spirituality.
you, what was
I have been
hurtful,
practicing
because I know that a
abstinence
lot
from
of
drugs and
us,
alcohol
when
since
you're in the
April
recovery
23rd of
community,
94,
you're
and I
exposed to
believe in
people
people
who
finding
relapse
what
or have a
works
hard
for them.
time.
If you
And it's
haven't
hard to
already, please
know
subscribe to the
how to
podcast
help.
on
You
iTunes
know what I
or
mean?
follow us
And
on
so I
Instagram
would love to
at
get your
ODA
perspective on that.
Podcast.
But
That is
the place I like to start
ODAT
is with
Podcast.
what I call the
So you
lightning
don't miss
round,
out
which
on
is
any
a
upcoming
misnomer because
episodes
it
like
takes a long
this
time.
one.
Okay,
Today,
no
I
problem.
have the honor of
Shoot away.
sharing
Let's
a
do it.
very touching story
Your
from my new
game is so
friend,
fun.
Tim Lodgen.
Okay,
I
so
found
do you
Tim's
have a
openness
favorite
and
recovery book?
vulnerability to be truly courageous. He
Actually,
has a huge
knocking
following
doors
on
down.
Instagram already,
Oh,
and he
who's that
shares
by?
the message of hope in
I don't.
such a
It's
profound
Carlos.
way.
I don't know
His
his middle name, but
stories
it's
will
Carlos
both bring a tear
Valenzuela.
to your eye,
Okay.
but in that
He is
magical way that only those of us in
not a
recovery
NASCAR
really
driver, but a
understand.
Formula One
It was
racer.
such a pleasure to
Oh,
speak with
wow,
Tim today,
really?
and
And
I
it's a
hope
true
you enjoy
story
this
about his drug
conversation as much
addiction
as I
and
did.
how he struggled with it for years, and now he's so I think he's like 10 years sober now,
Oh my
and
gosh.
he's driving and winning all these races, and his life has completely changed. And no, it's a really good book. And also, I've read three of my buddy Brandon Novak's books. He's got three of them out,
He
and
wrote 3 books already?
he's got three books already, and two of them are New York bestsellers.
Wow. So just for those who don't know, Brandon was part of the Jackass community. Is that right? Is that fair?
And Viva La Bam, and then he's a part of the CKY crew, which does music. So he's been around a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I would love to talk to him too. But wow, 3 books. I would imagine with all the Jackass experiences, he could fill a few.
And he tells everything. He doesn't hold anything back.
God
And
bless
some of
him.
the things that he says, you're like, I can't believe you just admitted to doing
You're
that.
like, ooh.
Yeah. But he'll tell you he's got to be an open book, and
Yeah.
he just wants the people to know his true story. He doesn't want to sugarcoat it. And
Yeah.
from him going, he overdosed 13 times, was in 27 treatment centers, and it
Wow.
finally wasn't until the last time when he was homeless. He had no money. He was
Wow.
sleeping on the streets, and he walked into a treatment center in which he'd been in 5 or 6 times. And he even said in his interviews, when he walked in this last time, the person at the front desk saw something different. They were like, okay, so you're ready now? Like, he said, finally it clicked. I mean,
Wow, that's amazing.
his mother took out a grave plot for him. His friends took life insurance policies out on him. Like, they were expecting him to die. 100%.
Wow. Yeah, that is, yeah, a lot of those people with all that visibility, a lot of them don't fare well.
Yeah, and
So,
he said, when Bam brought him on, he was trying to help him, but what he actually did was he enabled him, because he was
mm,
getting paid all this money, so he could get
right.
anything he wanted whenever he wanted, and it was
No
like a double-edged
consequences.
sword. Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. That
yeah,
makes it so much harder. So you were exposed. So you mentioned earlier that you went through school with Brandon.
yes,
You went through, yeah. So you must have been exposed to all kinds of people and
yeah. I
outrageous.
mean, in high school it was kind of funny because the first time I ever drank, I was in ninth grade,
Oh,
and
freshman.
yeah, and we had a freshman party. My friend had a freshman party, and he got a whole bunch of beer, and I drank it. And the next day, I was so sick. I mean,
Mm.
throwing up, hangover. And I remember it was almost at the end of the summer, and my mom was having a party, and for my punishment of being hungover, she made me shuck 60 ears of corn, because we were having a party at the house. And she said, "There's a bag for you to throw up, and shuck all these pieces of corn."
Oh
As I laid
man.
on the couch getting sick and trying to shuck this corn, but I didn't touch alcohol again until my senior year.
Oh,
Like
wow. It had
I
like
didn't
a,
want anything to do with it. It made me that sick. And I was like, that's not for me. But my senior year, that's when I got into drugs and alcohol. And it
okay.
went from
0
just
to
doing it
60.
on the weekends to doing it during the week, sometimes before school, during school, after school. It became my life. And
Yeah.
it took everything from me. I was an athlete. I was a Golden Gloves boxer. I was in skateboarding, football, baseball. And as soon as I started drinking and doing drugs, not only did my priorities change, but all my friends changed. Like I wasn't hanging
Right.
out with the people playing sports and doing good in schools. I was hanging out with people partying and having fun and getting in trouble. And
My kind of people.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed it. We had a great
Yeah, of
time,
course. Yeah.
but after high school, it came to that point where I didn't have really good grades to go to college.
Um,
And a lot of my friends were joining the military. So
ooh,
I was like, you know what? I'm not really getting into college. And a lot of my friends got into heroin too, and Brandon
oof.
included. And I was like, I don't want to go down that road. Like I was smoking pot at that point, doing LSD and drinking. But
All the
I
normal
just,
things.
yeah, yeah, just normal
Yeah,
things.
that's
But
fine.
I really had a stigma about heroin, cocaine, and like opioids. Like I didn't want anything to do with that. I
Mm.
just wanted to kind of be like a modern day hippie. I like hanging out, listening to classic rock and partying with my friends. So I decided to join the Marine Corps right out of high school.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, so
You was
right out of
trained.
high school, I went into the Marine Corps,
They didn't
and
drug test you?
they did, but I had stopped a month prior to going. Like I didn't leave until
Oh,
September 7th, and like somewhere in about the end of July, I stopped smoking pot and doing everything else. I still drank, but that didn't matter. It was the drugs that really they were looking for. So I passed all the
okay.
tests and everything. But as soon as we got out of boot camp and we were stationed in North Carolina, all we did when we got off was go drink.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what we did when we were at 4 o'clock. When we were let out of formation, we would get dressed and leave the base and go right to a bar or a strip club, and we would do our thing until Sunday.
Until Sunday. Oh my
Yeah,
God, that is so great. Well, that's not uncommon. For the military guys, so young and
yeah.
you know,
And and their thing about being in the Marines or pretty much any military, when you're in the military, the bars will tell you if you're old enough to take a bullet for this country, you're old enough
you
to
can
have a cold
drink.
beer.
Wow.
So they would serve us at 18, 19, 20 years old, not caring. And their only stipulation was don't stand there with a beer in your hand, put it on the table. And when you're
Oh,
ready to drink, take a sip or put it back
and
down
put
in
it
case
back down.
anybody should happen to walk in.
Right.
But you could go right up to the bar, they'd serve you. But that was the only stipulation. Don't stand there with it in your hand.
Don't hold it. Okay. And that's when you were like 18, 19 years old.
18, 19, 20, yeah. And
Wow.
it was from Friday till Sunday. I mean, we would come in sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning Sunday and have to be in formation at 3:30 in the morning.
Oh,
And we were all still drunk. And then we'd
so
have to go
drunk.
run 3 miles and do all this calisthenics, throwing up. But it was kind of expected almost. Like all of our sergeants, we would see them out at the bars too.
Yeah.
And they were like, if we're there at 3 a.m., you better be there at 3 a.m., just as long as it doesn't impede what we're doing.
That
So
is
it wasn't
amazing.
frowned upon.
Isn't that wild? I wonder if it's different now.
I'm sure it is. A lot has
I'm
changed
sure
since
it's a lot
95,
different.
96. Yeah.
Yeah, things are different. Oh my gosh. Well, that's intense. I'm going to circle back to that. Because I have 4 more questions for the lightning rounds.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I'm all yours.
I know. Do you have a go-to mantra or quote that you live by besides Semper Fi? Is that a
Yeah,
thing?
no, I don't know if it's actually a quote, but I'm really big on the word hope.
Oh,
I lost hope, and
mm,
I had 3 suicide attempts that I lived through, and that was my deepest, darkest point in my life. And
oh,
the first time I did it, I was 20, just got home from the Marine Corps,
oh,
and
really?
in the 90s, they knew about PTSD, but they
Mhm,
didn't really treat it. It
mm,
wasn't an ongoing thing like it is now. So
okay.
they pretty much, it was just like, okay, we'll go home and readjust to society. And for the first 3 months I was home, it was very hard for me. And my mom let me move back in. I got my old bed and it's made it comfortable for me. But I found myself one day, you know, wanting to end it all because, you know, I have bipolar disorders also.
Okay.
And I wasn't taking my medicine, but I was drinking and drugging. So that, you know, multiplied that by 10 times easy. And I had a girlfriend at the time, and I was sitting at home and went to my stepdad's armoire and pulled his gun out. And I sat it on my lap, and I just wanted, I didn't want to drink anymore. I was missing being a Marine, and I didn't know my purpose and my place in life. And luckily, you know, I wanted to do it, but I was too much of a coward to do it. So I called my girlfriend and told her what was going on. And she came over to my house and we talked, you know, and she helped me to put it away and things, said everything was going to be better. And that was the first time I really lost hope. And the second time, this was about 40 years ago. I had some surgeries. I was a mixed martial arts fighter in my 30s, and I had seven surgeries because of that. And so they were the doctors were giving me pain medicine like it was Tic Tacs. And every time I go in there, they just refill the prescription, and that was like for 4 years long. And I remember saying to myself yet again, I'm an alcoholic. I'm taking this pain medicine every day. I'm going to die if I continue to do this. So I took 18 5-milligram Percocets, and I drank a 12-pack of beer. And I remember praying to God to please don't let me wake up.
Oh.
And I woke up the next morning, and
you must have had such a high tolerance.
Well, yeah, I was taking them for 4 years at that point. You know what I mean? Because of all the surgeries that I had. And it was nonstop. Every 30 days, I get my prescription for 4 years straight. And I was drinking alcohol on top of that and smoking pot on top of that too. So I was doing all three every single day. And when I woke up the next morning, I was like, wow, well, maybe he's got a different plan for me. But that didn't stop me from drinking or smoking pot. But it did, however, get me off of the opioids. I myself chose not to take pain medicine anymore after that night. And for the first week, I was really, really sick. I mean, throwing up, using the restroom, just fever, like I had a massive flu.
So
and then
you were dope sick.
And then it subsided. And I haven't touched a pain medicine since then. That's been like 6 years now. And I have no desire to do it.
Okay,
I broke my ankle a couple months ago. I mean, I'm not my ankle, my wrist. I broke my wrist, and they offered me pain medicine, and I said no. I said, give me 800 milligram ibuprofen, and I'll take Tylenol, and that's all I've done. So it was like that addiction of the opioids was lifted. I had no desire to do that anymore.
Wow,
but I was still drinking every single day.
Yeah, still
And that's what really took me down. And that's what made me realize that I do have a purpose and not to give up hope. You know, February of last year, about 2 weeks before I went into rehab, I had gotten a new truck. I was coming home from the liquor store and I hit something, and I still don't know what I hit. I honestly have no recollection of hitting anything. And the next morning when I woke up, I told my wife, hey, I'm going to go get some milk and some water. And she said, go look at your truck in the driveway. So I got to my truck, and the side mirrors hanging off, the front tires all smashed in, the rims hanging off. And she just looks at me and she's like, you don't know what you hit, do you? And I said, no, I don't. She said, Tim, you could have killed somebody last night. She said, something has to change. So and she's like, you can't stay here. You got to go figure it out. Oh, so I packed some things up and got in my truck, and I called my friend. And he said, yeah, come to my house, let things cool over, and then you go back in a couple of days to your wife and sort things out. So I get to his house, and his bright idea was, well, let's go to the bar. You know, I mean, you can't go home, might as well go drinking. So I'm like, sure, no problem. So we go to the bar and we drink and do shots. And as I'm leaving the bar, I rear end somebody at a red light. And I'm shit-faced. Same truck, two days later.
Same truck? It was drivable?
Yes. I got somebody to come out and put the spare tire on my tire, and the rim was okay. And yeah, and my side view mirror, I was like, well, I got a left one. I don't need a passenger side view mirror. I'm good. So I drove like that for a long time. And I rear-ended a person, and I get out, and I'm like, are you okay? And he said, yeah, I'm okay. I said, well, your car's okay. The front of my bumper was all smashed up. Wow. And I said, well, you're okay. Your car's okay. I'm out. Jumped in my truck and I took off. And I know that wasn't the right thing to do, but I was drunk, and I knew if I stuck around, I was going to jail. There's no doubt about it. My truck would have been impounded. Like, I just wasn't ready for that. So I go back to my friend's house and I'm like, I can't stay here. I got to go figure something out. So I go to the liquor store and get liquor. And I go to a park and ride where you wait for a train to come pick you up. And I sat there for 2 days in the parking lot, drinking myself into oblivion. I turned my phone off. I didn't want to hear nothing. I didn't want to talk to nobody. And I was really at the lowest point of my life at that point. I had lost all of hope. And it's 7 after 10 on Friday morning. I turned my phone on. At 9 after 10, Brandon calls me. 2 minutes after I had my phone off for 48 hours.
Wow.
And he's like, Lodging, what the F are you doing? I'm like, I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm tired. And he said, good, that's what you need. I just talked to your mom and your wife, and we have a plane ticket ready for you tonight at 8:30. Get on that plane and it will save your life. I'm like, okay. I still wasn't feeling going to rehab. So I hung up, and like 30 minutes later, my wife calls me. Hey, where are you? Where have you been? Everybody's been worried about you. Please come home, try to eat something, take a shower, and please get on that plane tonight. So I get home and I try to eat. I couldn't because I've been drinking for 2 days straight, just nothing but Fireball whiskey. No food in my no food in my belly or nothing. At this point, I was up to 25 miniatures a day of the Fireball.
How did you even get it just a big bottle?
My addiction told me not to get a big bottle because then I would know exactly how much I was drinking.
Oh.
And that is actual truth.
Funny games we play with ourselves.
I didn't want to get the big bottle because I would look over and be like, man, I drank that whole bottle today. But these little miniatures I could drink and throw away and not remember how many I drank.
Oh, funny.
So I was playing a mind trick in my own mind. Yeah. So I get home and I'm sitting in bed and I'm scared to go to rehab. And everything I've done over the last 27 years just started to hit me. And I go into my basement and I throw a rope around the rafters and I put it around my neck.
Oh my God.
And I step up on a bucket, and it had gotten quiet for about 3 to 4 minutes. And my wife comes down the steps and she sees me, and I'm in the lounge room, and she looks at me and she says, well, what are you doing? And I said, I can't do this anymore. I was like, the pain's got to stop. And she just looks at me and she says, please get down. Everything's going to be okay. Just get on that plane tonight. Do you know what this would do to your children? Just please get down. So I got down and I cried for 5-10 minutes downstairs in a ball. And then I go back upstairs into the bedroom. And at this time it was about 4 or 5 in the afternoon. So I still had about 3 hours before I went. And I just sat and thought about everything that I've done, lie, cheat, steal, everything I've done. And I called my friend and I said, I'm ready. And I said, I'll be on that plane. He says, when you get to the airport, call me after you check your bags in and you're past security, because I want to make sure you're getting on that plane. You're not just going to go and catch a cab and get out of there. Mm-hmm. So I sit down, I call him, and he just simply says, I'm proud of you. I love you. Everything's going to be all right. As I'm sitting there, I get this overwhelming feeling that came over my complete body. And something in my head said, it's going to be okay. And that is the first time in my life I have felt hope. I have felt like I was in the right place at the right time in my life to get the help that I need to save my life. Mm-hmm. And I can never explain enough that feeling that came over me. It completely washed over my body. It was an amazing feeling, and I'll never forget that for the rest of my life. And if I take that for granted, what a shame that would be not to acknowledge that experience that I had. And it wasn't from me, it came from something. And I can't deny that. To be where I was in my life at that time, for those things to fall into place when they did, It's not a coincidence.
Do you feel like that was your first spiritual experience?
That was my second one. And the first one I completely ignored. And this day resonates with me. It was March 16th, 2017. And we have a reservoir around here that it's all through the woods, and you can drive through, and it's about a 5-mile nice drive through the woods, and there's water. It's really beautiful. Mm. And I'm driving through the reservoir and I'm crying and I'm hitting the steering wheel. And I'm like, please give me a sign. Tell me I'm not alone. Tell me that everything is going to be okay. I can't do this anymore. And I drive me through the reservoir, and I come up to a tree where my senior year of high school, my best friend was killed in a car accident, and he hit the tree. And at the tree is flowers, and they leave a book there. You can write to them, and it's like a little visual for my friend. Right. So I go and I turn around and I stop at his tree. And I said, Bill, if you can send me a sign, please tell me I'm not alone. Please tell me that I'm going to get through this. And this is going to trip me up. So I turn around and I'm going back through the reservoir. And instead of parking, I'm on the right-hand side. Instead of parking on the right hand where your car would face like normal, I pull over and park on the left-hand side where the cars are facing me. And I sit there for 10 minutes. And this car pulls up. And a man gets out of the car. And I'm looking at him. He's got his dog. And I'm looking at him. I say, man, he looks familiar. And all of a sudden it hit me. It was my friend's dad that I had not seen since he passed away 27 years ago. And I get out and I'm like, Mr. Bill. And he just looks at me. He's like, Timmy. And I just lost it. And I started crying. And I'm like, I can't, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. Nothing stops. And he said, I have to tell you this. He said, I'm supposed to be in South Carolina this morning. He said, my wife came to me in a dream last night and told me to hold off on South Carolina, go tomorrow, go to Loch Raven in the morning and walk the dog. I just got chills. It was amazing.
God.
I mean, I tell that story in meetings and people tear up, and but I didn't listen. He actually sent me a sign when I asked him to, and I didn't listen.
It still had an effect on you though, right? Like I totally believe like it just takes what it takes. And maybe you needed that experience in addition to the second, spiritual experience. Like it just takes what it takes, and it wasn't lost on you. Right?
No, it's one of the most.
That's an amazing story. And that's something that you get to share.
It's incredible. And when like I said, when I tell it, people just look at me like, wow, that's amazing.
I know.
Like that's amazing. His wife had passed like 2 years early, and his son passed, and he was like, yeah, Miss Denise told me to go to Loch Raven. He goes, I was planning on going to South Carolina this morning.
Wow.
Like he had no intentions of walking his dog at that reservoir. And I mean, I can't explain that.
Well, can't we though? Power greater than ourselves, right?
Power greater than ourselves, absolutely.
Yeah, that is a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. No,
absolutely.
I love that. They say that alcoholism is a disease of isolation and connection is the cure, right? And it's like those connections that give us the hope, right? It's like that connection that you had with that man on that day under those circumstances. I mean, that's wild.
Yeah. And that was 2016. I haven't seen him before or since that day.
Wow.
Like I don't run into him. I don't see him. Like I didn't see him before. My friend died in 1996, and for me to see him in 2016, 20 years later, and I haven't seen him since.
Come on.
It was like Bill sent me an angel that day.
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because we're a funny group of people. We like experience these miracles, dare I say. And, you go to rooms where people have recovered from like a seemingly hopeless disease. And it's like, oh, these are miracles, but it's easy to sort of fall asleep again and be like, oh, is God really a thing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then you hear these stories and it's like, okay, I got you. I hear you.
And it was kind of like, well, okay, so he talked to me. I know somebody's there. So that means I'm okay. So I can just continue to do what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, you should have listened to this right now and change your life. It was almost like, well, I know somebody's watching over me and I'll be fine. So I'll just continue to do what I do. Right.
I'll be fine.
Right.
Fine. We're funny.
Lies we tell ourselves.
I love that hope is something that is so dear to your heart though, because that really is sort of the elixir for change. That's really beautiful. What is your recovery or self-care routine like? Do you do a certain number of meetings? Do you pray and meditate in the morning? What does that look like?
I do a little bit of both. When I first got home from rehab, and they tell you in rehab to do 90 and 90.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how the hell am I going to do 90 and 90? I did 98 and 90. And,
Overachiever.
but I look at the guy, I'm like, how am I going to do 90 and 90? And he looks at me and goes, did you drink every day? I was like, yes, I did. He goes, how many hours out of the day did you drink? I was like, as soon as I got off work until I went to bed. He's like, so 4 or 5 hours a day? I was like, yeah. He goes, you can't do 1 hour for your sobriety. And that's when it kind of hit me. I was like, oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I
So
could,
funny.
couldn't I?
We're so funny. I couldn't possibly, my busy schedule goes.
Right. Yeah, but I could drink all day and throw everything out the window and not get anything done, right?
Yeah. Okay, so you did 98 and 90. That's
90.
awesome.
And then I found myself back into the gym, exercising and working out. That was one of my biggest.
A lot of people use exercise as a form of, man, it really just is like a mood stabilizer.
It really is.
Does, the neuroscience.
Releases endorphins.
Yeah. Your serotonin, and it resets your GABA levels. It does so much too.
Yeah, no, that's been a big help. And, it's like, and now I'm actually, I'll be 10 months sober next week. I'm training for a bodybuilding competition this year.
Congratulations.
And like my friend called and told me, he's like, man, he said, it doesn't matter if you win. He said, the fact that you're doing that and getting on stage, he said, after what you've been through, he said, you're a goddamn miracle. He said, you inspire me so much. He said, even if you come in last place, he said, you won. He said, you beat it. And he was, he wants me to write a book. He's like,
you have to.
That's what he said. He's like, don't let this go past. He said, your stories are resonating with so many people. He was like, just write the damn book.
Yeah. I mean, you're somebody who's willing to be transparent and speak from the heart. The fact that you're able to share something that brings tears to your eyes or gives you, that's what people resonate with, right? It's easy to try to want to look good, but it takes courage to be vulnerable and transparent. But that's what resonates with people.
Yeah, and like my mom says, because you don't read anything off of paper. I was like, no, Mom. I said, because it comes from my heart. I was like, I'm telling the truth.
Yeah.
And if I'm reading it off of paper, it's not, people are not going to react to that. It's like I'm a robot, but I'm telling you how I feel and what it's done to me. And, a lot of people out there, they feel alone and like nobody knows what they're going through. Nobody could possibly know the pain that they feel when that is so far from the truth.
Yeah.
People in addiction, we're some strong warriors because we fight that battle every single day.
We develop such a heavy tolerance to pain. We actually are a lot stronger. It's to our detriment in a lot of ways.
It is. Absolutely.
But we turn our defects into assets, right? And so that strength and courage that you have to do the self-examination and to share your story, that's, I'm sure you hear this too. Like people talk about, oh, I got sober by myself. And in the back of my mind, I'm like, that doesn't take any courage whatsoever.
Being sober and being in recovery are two different things.
Two totally different
things. You could be sober and miserable. But recovery, doing the steps actually help you throughout your entire life. You become a better human being.
Oh, absolutely.
So I still go to 3 meetings a week.
3 a week. Okay.
Three a week. I have to.
Do you guys have men's meetings out there in Maryland, Baltimore?
We not really. It's co. I mean, you could probably find some men meetings.
Oh, that's so interesting.
I like going with everybody because it's different perspective from different people.
Yeah.
And I just think, if a bunch of men, it's kind of like, I don't know, kind of the men's club. I like hearing from everybody because it doesn't just affect men. What I mean? It affects everybody.
Yeah, my husband's been sober a long time and he kind of grew up and so I was going to ask you, I thought it'd be fun to sort of talk about the differences between like California AA and Baltimore, some of the differences. I had a friend, I was telling you earlier, a friend from high school got sober in Maryland. When he came back to California, he's like, you guys aren't doing it right.
Yeah, well, they're very strict. It's funny you mentioned California because a lot of people will say, that California sober.
Oh, that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, they look down on that so much. They're like, if you're sober, that means
that's bullshit, by the way.
No using any mind alternating substances whatsoever. You know what I mean? They're like, and they won't sponsor you if you're on the medical marijuana program. They won't sponsor you if you're doing Suboxone. Like they want you 100% sober and in the life of sobriety.
Okay, but the caveat to that is fucking stay alive. Like if you have to smoke weed and do Suboxone and to stay alive, do that shit. Like harm reduction, I think that is a valid form of recovery. But I just want to throw it out there that I'm from California. I don't currently live there, but I grew up with hardcore abstinence. And that's what I practice. I practice hardcore abstinence, and everybody that I respect and who I want to emulate are practicing hardcore abstinence. This idea of California sober, that really paints such a negative picture for the rest of us in California who are like, that's fucking bullshit. Like, I'm all about you stay alive. If you got to smoke weed to stay alive, and you're on the path to harm reduction, and like you said, there's a difference between sober and recovered. Like, God bless you. Do what you got to do. I'm in no position to judge anybody else, but I'm hoping that people sort of on the marijuana, I was on the marijuana maintenance program when I first got sober. It took me 60 days to get 30 because I was a big weed smoker. But anyway, that's my soapbox. Sorry. This is
I was too. And honestly, coming home and not smoking pot, I think was harder for me than not picking up alcohol.
Yeah.
Because it's,
we didn't get in
I have
trouble,
a dispensary across the street from my house. Like, I literally look at it. Like, I could walk across there, and my daughter's got her card. Like, my wife smokes every day. 23.
You have a daughter that's 23?
I have a grandson who's 3.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I have 3 daughters, 23, 14, and 10. Yeah.
3 girls. Wow.
3 girls. But I got my grandboy. He was my buddy.
Gotcha. I hear grandchildren are way more fun than the actual children.
He is. We let him get away with murder.
And how long have you been married?
So I got with my wife in '96 when I got home from the Marine Corps.
Oh.
We got married in 2004, but we've been together since 1996. So I think this year is 27 years coming up.
I'm counting it from 96. Yeah, I started dating my husband I got sober in 94, and he had already been sober for like 5 years. But I count. It's so funny. It's like there's the date you get together, and then the date you get married, and but I like, if you meet the one, then it's the date that you meet.
Yeah, and kind of get it backwards. We started dating, we bought a house, then she got married, and then 4 years later we bought a house, we had a child, and then 4 years later we got married.
Oh, funny.
So we were already living together for 4 years. Then we had our daughter. Yeah. She was 3 when we got married.
Not uncommon.
No. And finally, we did a trip to Vegas with her parents and her grandparents.
Nice. And
they're like, why don't you guys just get married? You've been together 7 years. You have a 4-year-old. Like, what's stopping you? So we went and spent $60 down at the courthouse and went to a chapel and had a great marriage. We had a nice wedding. It was cool. Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. And did she ever go to Al-Anon, or did she party at all, or where was she at with all this?
So I would say she's a normal person.
She's a normie.
She's got 5 bottles of wine downstairs, and it will be downstairs for a whole year and a half.
The collect dust and shit. That's alcohol abuse.
She'll have a drink, and then it could sit there for a whole month before she does anything else about it. But she does smoke pot every day.
Every day?
Every day.
Oh, it doesn't bother you?
It did at first. When I first came home, as I said, that was the harder for me than the alcohol, because she's not a big alcohol drinker, but she smokes pot. Okay. And she's been very good about it. She'll go outside, or she'll wait for me to leave, go to the gym. She doesn't do it in front of me. Okay. I barely see it. You know what I mean? So she's very conscious of, she's told me she feels awkward doing it if I'm in the house.
Yes, so, I would imagine.
So that's pretty cool that she does that. She's been extremely open about everything and very receptive to my recovery. Okay. She should have left me, years ago for everything I've done. She really should have. And she stuck by me, and I asked her, why did you stick by me? Why didn't you leave? And she said, because I love you. She's like, and I believe in you. She goes, and I know that person wasn't you, and I know the person you can become, and I want to be with that person. Oh. I can't ask for anything more than that.
Now she has the best of you.
Yeah, and what a shame it would be for us to get a divorce and I give my best to somebody else after 26 years. I mean, what a creep.
Yeah, that would be a bummer. I have a couple of resentment over that. That's a beautiful. What's your wife's name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer. God bless Jennifer. I know we're supposed to maintain anonymity, but I kind of have thrown. I used to sort of have like this thin veil, you know, saying, "Oh, I went to 12-step. I went to a 12." But I think we're all very clear about what it was that helped us to get sober. So you did treatment. Did you do steps in treatment, or did they largely take you to a lot of meetings? How?
So we did steps in treatment. We did 7
Okay.
meetings a day, and
7 meetings a day?
a day in
A
treatment,
day.
a day
Oh
for
my God.
32 days. So I did over 200 and some meetings in 32 days in treatment.
I was like, you mean a week? A day? That's crazy. Okay.
It was full on recovery.
Okay.
I mean, we had a personal trainer. We were working out. We had therapists.
When did
We
you
had
have
psychologists. We had doctors. I mean, it was a complete hands-on recovery center.
So you had a
And
really good you had a good treatment experience.
yeah, so Banyan Treatment Centers in Florida,
Okay.
and
Florida.
that's where Brandon went, and he's actually a counselor for them, and he's a addiction advocate. So he helps people get into programs. He himself has opened up 2 recovery houses within the past year.
Yeah.
So he's really big on helping people that need help. And since he's on I don't know if he's on the board there or whatever, but he's got a direct line. It's like, hey, you know, John, Joe, whatever needs help. Do you have any beds open? If you do, okay, well, let's book the flight. They'll be there. Like, he's hands-on with that.
Wow.
Yeah, I was very fortunate enough.
That's not uncommon for people who have sort of stood at the abyss of destruction. And, you know, if someone can pull you back and you kind of come to, like you have, and like as he has, as I have, there is such a drive to want to save others from that same. Do you know what I mean? Like, so
I know exactly what you mean. That's why I'm doing these podcasts, and because I want people to know they're not alone. I want to share my story. Hopefully, my first one, I was like, hopefully this helps one person. But the response I got from doing the first podcast was so humbling. It just blew me away.
Isn't that interesting? It's a humbling experience. Yeah.
It's amazing. You know, just yesterday, I got a phone call from a gentleman I haven't seen in 4 years. And he called and said, hey, he goes, I see you on Instagram. I see you doing podcasts. He's like, I just want to tell you how proud I am of you. He's like, your before and after picture. He said, I can't even wrap my head around it. He's like,
oh my God, would you send it to me? I don't
yeah, he's like, you were so fat and bloated. And you said, you look like a straight up alcoholic. He said, and now the way
like, people are like, oh my God, you used to look like shit. You're like, oh, thanks.
I was like, okay. And you don't recognize, I mean, I kind of knew my face was getting chubby and my skin was getting flush, but I didn't care.
I know.
You know?
Not an issue.
Now I look back on it. The first time I saw it a couple of weeks ago, I teared up. And I was like, wow, I looked like that. I looked horrible. Yeah. You know, and when I got into treatment, they did all these tests on me. My liver was 4 times what it should have been.
Oh, that's so scary.
So again, not another coincidence that I went at that specific time in my life.
Yeah.
The doctor told me if I would have continued drinking for the next 2 to 3 years, I wouldn't have made it to my 50th birthday.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And I had no idea.
You say coincidences. My sister calls those coincigods.
Yeah. I've heard that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I believe there's no coincidences anymore. Things happen for a reason when they're supposed to happen at that moment.
Yeah, that is amazing. Oh my gosh. Okay, so treatment sounds like a very good experience for you. You get out, and it sounds like you were already going to meetings. Did you get a sponsor right away, or how did you go about finding a sponsor?
I waited until I was 8 months in to get a sponsor. And
and you're like almost 10 months?
Month and a half ago. Yeah, because I'm coming up on 10 next week. So yeah. I saw a lot of people coming out and getting sponsors right away. And then I would see them switching sponsors because they didn't connect with that sponsor. I saw it so many times. I wanted to go to the meetings and feel people out and generally see the people that go all the time and actually walk the walk, not talk it, and don't show up in meetings. And finally, I found this gentleman named Jeff, and we hit it off. He's got 39 years sober. He's got 40 years coming up in February. Wow. And just the way he speaks, the way he lives his life now, all just resonated with me. And we hit it off, and he's my sponsor now. And he calls me, I'm gonna say at least 3 times a week. And I see him every Friday.
How often do you call him?
Maybe about twice. twice a
Okay.
week.
Couple times a
But
week. Because he's calling you. That's interesting. Like I
telling
tend
me to make
to.
sure I'm doing my step work, because he gives me, step 1, step 2. He makes sure I'm
Mhm.
writing it down. Then we'll go over what I'm writing down. And he actually makes me work the steps, other than just, oh, well, the steps, just try to live them. He actually categorizes them down and makes me work them, makes me write
That's
them
awesome.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So
very
it
good.
helps me. He keeps me accountable.
Oh, accountability is huge.
Yes.
And I don't know if you realize this, well, you probably do, but like just the service that you're doing, that is like service work is the one thing that I have found builds your self-esteem back up. Because as we're going through that sort of, you know, just going through the ringer basically of addiction, our self-esteem is just pummeled over and
I had
over.
none. I've really had none.
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't want
And
to take
that service.
showers. I didn't want to get out of bed because of my depression. I didn't want to talk to
Oof.
my friends. I didn't want to go out of the house, and I'm finally loving myself again for the first time
Mm.
since high school, before I started drinking and
Oh,
drugging. And it's just an amazing feeling to actually like the person that you see in the mirror now.
yeah.
And you're legitimately proud of yourself for doing the things that you're doing,
Right.
and then
Oh,
when other
that's
people acknowledge
beautiful.
that's where I become so humble, because I'm like, wow, I'm just doing this to stay sober and be me, but it's
Mhm.
affecting other people that I have no idea that it's affecting. And they're telling me about how it's helped them in their whatever struggles they may be. It may not just be addiction, but just daily life or things going on at home or whatever they're
Mhm.
dealing with, that I'm helping them in some way. It's you couldn't have told me this 10 months ago when I was in rehab, that I would be on podcast talking about my story, because I
Mhm.
barely shared anything in rehab. I was timid. I
Oh,
didn't want to tell my
really?
story. I mean, I'd raise my hand if they on certain things, but nobody in rehab knew my full story. I never told them anything of what we're talking about now,
Right. No,
and I
that
feel open to doing that now, and it's a blessing.
that is, yeah, it's amazing. And it seems like once you like let the cat out of the bag, then there's nothing to fear, right?
No, no,
Until the
it's a huge
worst.
weight off your shoulders.
Whew. Yeah. That's huge. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the differences between meetings, because I know meetings are run differently everywhere you go. Like
Yeah.
people are funny, right? So like in California, there is a chairperson who shares their story, and then a secretary who runs the meeting, right? And
Okay.
every meeting opens a little differently. Like sometimes they read prayers or whatever, the serenity, whatever, and then the chairperson will share for about 10 or 15 minutes and then do like topic discussion. So it's so interesting because you get to hear everybody's story, right? And they set a timer, right? It's supposed to be what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. But in like I was telling you, my friend from Maryland, he was saying that like anytime somebody speaks, like we clap. And he's like, what is with all the clapping? And you're saying they don't clap where you're from, right?
No, they clap once when the chairperson's done telling the story, and that's about it. They're very big on no cross talking.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, phones off. Don't look at your phones. Pay
Yeah.
attention, because it's disrespectful to the person talking, which is 100%. We
Yeah.
do have a secretary that runs it. We have an outside person that comes in that chairs the meeting. Um,
Okay.
and usually the person that speaks, they'll give them up to 40 minutes to talk.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Okay,
And
so
then
in California, they call those a speaker meeting where one person just
but
has.
after the 40 minutes, the last 20 minutes of the hour, they'll call on people in the audience, or in the meeting.
Is it volunteer or do they call like
They
the
could just be
chairperson will call people?
they could just be like, Tim, come on up and tell your story, or John, come up and tell your story. Like, you never know if they're going to call you or not, which I kind of like,
Yeah.
because you never know who's going to go up there and tell the story.
Yeah, it's
And if
very
they're calling on the
exciting.
same people over and over again, I'm sorry, but when you've heard the story 10 times from the same person, it tends not to resonate as much as it
Yeah,
did the
after a
first
while, you're
two
just
or
like,
three times. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, okay, I
so
know what he's going to say already.
yeah. So like in California, they'll do a topic discussion. And so I
Okay.
used to go to a 6 a.m. meeting every day and they would do, the chairperson, then a topic discussion. So it could be anything from like willingness to surrender, the family afterward, like what step are you on? Like what's, so it does. So people are even though it's sometimes some of the same people share, because you get people like, or some people are better speaker than others. Let's just say it
100%.
like
Yeah.
that. Right. So a lot of times some of the same people get called on, but they have good things to share. And you'll always get like that bleeding heart. I'm going to call on people who never get to share, or sometimes they'll do a volunteer, and the volunteers always scare me because it's always like the craziest person who takes the meeting hostage.
Yes, true. I mean, our meetings are structured on Monday, or outside speaker. Tuesday, we read from the AA book, and they'll pick a chapter from the AA book. We'll read the whole chapter.
Oh,
And if there's
really?
time left after the chapter, we'll discuss the chapter and how it affects us in our daily life.
Okay.
And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are outside meetings, or outside speakers, sorry. And then Saturday and Sunday is daily reflections. They read from the daily reflection book or whatever date that it is. And some person will start it, and then they do a round robin, and everybody in the meeting gets to see how that daily reflection,
Like what it
goes
means
with
to
what's
them.
going on in their life. So it's not just outside speakers all week long. I mean, they try to break it up by reading the book, doing daily reflections, and having outside speakers.
So you go to the same building or the same meeting, and it's just different every day?
I have a home group, which is
Okay.
my home group, but I
Yeah.
have chosen 2 other meetings that I go to.
Okay.
Because after a while, even in your home group, you have heard everybody's story.
Yeah.
And I like to keep it fresh and hear something new, because you never know with that 5 minutes somebody talks that really resonates to you and really hits home.
Yeah.
So I go to my home meeting, and then I'll go to a meeting on Friday nights at a church, and then Sunday night at a different church. And the Friday and Sundays are outside speakers that I've never seen before. They bring in people from different counties to come and speak. So it's always a new, fresh person talking.
That's nice. And I just need one person to say something that resonates with me to save the meeting for me. Cause sometimes you'll be in meetings, I haven't been sober a long time. It's like, I've heard this all before a million times, and it just depends. But sometimes someone will just really share from the heart, and just okay, that was totally worth it, because it does get kind of repetitive.
Yeah. I mean, and even if it's repetitive, I find myself when I walk into the meeting, it's like a calming comes over me. I know I'm at a meeting. I know I'm about to hear something that I need to hear for that day, or something that happened during the week. I'm about to release that into the meeting.
That's
and
nice.
It's so good. It's like seeing a therapist.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I have had that experience too, where I walk into the room and then I just go, oh, I don't even realize that I'm uptight until I get there. And then I'm with my people, who get my kind of crazy, and I just relax. It's like, oh, everything's going to be okay.
Nobody judges you. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, I mean, they say they don't judge you. They say they don't judge you, but humans are humans. We judge people.
Yeah. All right. We
but
just
like you said,
restraint of tongue and pens.
Yeah, but when you're around a group of like-minded people, it's just so much easier to be able to share your story and get everything out in the open and off your chest.
Yeah. Yeah. I've often thought that, we find a new normal, right? And I'm with people who get my kind of crazy, and it makes me feel normal, and so it just feels like everything's okay. Right?
Yes. I mean, luckily I don't remember a lot of it, but my friends and wife do.
I'm sure. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, during that period of time that you struggled, okay, so let me just frame this for a sec. So I've been sober a long time. I didn't relapse a lot. And I'm always trying to be very sensitive to people who relapse, right? I was one of the lucky ones. I don't know why I got it early. I got sober when I was 25, and I don't know why I was blessed, but I really, whatever, it is what it is. But my heart just breaks for people who are the chronic relapsers, or who struggle for a long time. And I always want to say, I don't know, I want to say what the right thing is. You know what I mean? Can you think back to some things that were helpful for you to hear, and some things that were not?
Helpful would be usually my mom or my wife, telling me, that there's a better way. You don't have to drink every day. Let go of the past, because a lot of the things that happened to me, like my father left when I was 6 years old, and I held on to that up into my late 30s. That I kind of used that as a crutch. Issues. Yeah, I mean, I kind of used that as a crutch. Well, I can drink and drive. My father left me; he didn't love me, blah blah blah. And then finally, in my late 30s, I'm like, he's just a person. And him and my mom didn't break up because of me. They weren't in love anymore. And I just got to let it go and not blame him for me not being successful or me using drugs or alcohol. He had nothing to do with it. It happens to a lot of people, and I shouldn't allow that to dictate my future.
Did he not participate in your life after he left?
So, I mean, not really. I would see my father once or twice every 6 months. I remember being a little
traumatic.
I remember being a little boy.
That's legit trauma.
Yeah, and he would call my mom and be like, "I'm coming to get Timmy for the weekend, have his bag packed." I can't tell you how many times I waited by the front door with my bags packed, and he would call and say, "I can't come this weekend. I got to work, or I got to do this or do that." And as I got older, I found out he was just chasing women. That's what he wanted to do. And that's why him and my mom got a divorce, because my dad was cheating on him. So I just had to finally accept that that's just how my father is. It didn't have nothing to do with he didn't love me. He loves me. He's my father, but he wanted to do his own thing. Him and himself is a very selfish, egotistical person. And I'm okay with that now. That's just how he is. And it is what it is. I mean, I haven't spoken to my father going on 3 years this year.
Can I just tell you that is legitimate trauma though?
Oh yeah.
And people drink because of those childhood experiences. And it's like we learn disassociation and detachment as a survival skill, but those survival skills don't translate to healthy relationships as adults, because we actually need to be connected to our feelings so that we can process them. Like that idea that time heals all wounds, it's a fucking lie. It doesn't. The pain waits, and your story is, it's proof. That's legit trauma. And I know that it sounds like you are coming to peace with that, but I just want to validate for you that is legitimate trauma.
And another thing, my brother's 10 years older than me. So I was always like, well, why did he stick around until my brother was 17, but he left when I was 7? Is there something wrong with me? Did he not want to raise me? And then even up into my 30s, my dad would call my brother to go to gun shows or go out to dinner or lunch. Never called and asked me to go and do it. You know what I mean?
Oh my God. So that's what I would consider persistent and pervasive trauma, because it's like a re-injury every time that shit happens.
And like I said, and that's why coming up on 3 years now, I haven't spoken to him, just because, why should I care if he doesn't? Why should I take away from my sobriety and my freedom of letting go when he could give a shit less about what I'm doing? Now, I will say this. Last month, he called my mom and he asked me, he said, "How's Timmy doing?" And she said, "Pete, he's doing really good. He's coming up on 10 months. He goes, the meetings are every week. He's been doing podcasts." He goes, and she said he got quiet and was like, "Well, what about me?" And she said, "Well, only thing I can tell you is it's one of his steps is to make amends." She's like, "And he's working on his steps. So maybe this year he'll come and speak to you." And I'm going to do it for me, not for him. I'm going to do it to let that part of my life go. If he wants to have a relationship with me, that would be, I would accept that. And if he doesn't, I already accept that. That's something I don't have to worry about anymore. But I want him to know that, I'm sober. I forgive him for not being around, because that was a big thing. I didn't forgive him for a very long time, but I do forgive him now, because I can't change a person's personality. Yeah. He is who he is. And I can't hate him for that. What if people hated me for the last 27 years of my addiction? And who would I be to hate him for the way he lived his life? That was just the way his life was supposed to be. So I can't hold on to that.
Well, I appreciate your compassion. It sounds like you have compassion for yourself and compassion for your father. And, boundaries are an interesting way of navigating difficult relationships, right? But boundaries are a funny thing. Sometimes you don't know where they are until you cross them, right? But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it sounds like Jeff is a good guide for you and can help you navigate those. Those are tricky waters. My like mama bear is kind of coming out, and I'm like, ugh, be careful.
Yeah, and like, again, I'm doing it for me, and I don't expect anything.
Yeah.
So whenever you expect something from somebody, usually you get let down.
Yeah.
So I'm not expecting anything from him. I'm doing it to get it off of my shoulders so I can move on and be in recovery.
Yeah.
You know, and I heard something the other day at the meeting. The guy said, I don't want to be recovered. He said, I want to be in recovery. He said, because once my mind says I'm recovered, it's going to tell me I can go back out. He said, I want to be in recovery for the rest of my life. I never want to be cured or recovered. And I was like, I guess, okay, I can get that. Okay.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
works.
I like the idea of like perpetual evolution. Like, I feel like we're either evolving or devolving, right? And I like the recovery mindset, because that is always about learning and growing and changing for the better, right? There's always more to learn. There's always more to uncover. And yeah, I've never thought that like, oh, I got this. Like, it scares me when people think like, oh, I got this. I've seen way too many people relapse.
Yeah, it waits in the bushes for ambush and take you down quicker and harder than it did before.
That's right.
Yeah, it lurks in the darkness.
It lurks in the darkness. Well, that is I think that's a good place to wrap up. What do you think? So much good stuff. If people want to follow you, I found you on Instagram. Are we connected on Instagram? What's your Instagram handle?
It's at T-Lodgen, Lodgen, my last name.
T-Lodgen.
Yep.
You told me it was Lodge En, or is it IN?
Lodge In. It's Lodgen, but it's pronounced like ski lodge. And then like
that was the pronunciation.
And like you're going into a door, so Lodge In.
Lodge In. Got it. Yep. Yes. Yeah, you have quite the following already, which is amazing.
I've only been on Instagram for 3 months.
I'm so jealous. Can I just tell you? It's so. You're going to share this episode, aren't you?
Oh, 100%. I'll share it all week long. My wife said, what the hell is going on? I said, I don't know. I said, but tell me sobriety isn't gifting me things that I took away from myself for so long.
For so long.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. Well, I am just so happy for you and Jennifer and your girls and your grandson. Like,
thank you so much.
There is no ending. There's just always a new beginning. And, you know, it's so hopeful, right? Hope is hearing other people's experiences. I just love that.
Yeah, I've started the new chapter in my book, and it's not going to end with me taking myself out of my own story.
I love that. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. It was such a pleasure to get to know you. I'm really grateful for your story. And
thank you for having me on. I'm so humbled that you allowed me to come on and speak. And I hope this really helps somebody that needs to hear this today.
100% it will. All right. You have a great day. Bye, friend.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.